Hello everyone. Today I'm working on a beach scene. It's from a photograph I took of my daughter and her dad on Bayhead Beach in New Jersey. I just dressed her in a white sundress and her dad was wearing a white shirt with jeans. And I just told him to kind of walk and run and play in the surf. And I really wanted to capture the wet sand and the reflections in the wet sand because I love drawing reflections. So I'm not going to go through all the colors I used. I guess I could list them if someone really wants to know, but it was a lot of blue greens, and I was just trying to match what I had in the photograph. So something that helped me was I opened the photo I took in Photoshop and I used the eyedropper tool to suck up a color in the photo, and then it showed me a swatch of the colors I would need for the water. So I used a lot of peacock green in the water. I remember the name of that one, but I don't really remember all the other ones. Um, the biggest challenge you'll see as this video is going, I was afraid of the foam and I was afraid of the waves. So I kind of leave that for last. It's very important when you're doing a scene like this that you have consistency in front of where the people are. And when I would watercolor something like this, I could use a liquid masking frisket or some kind of liquid latex and paint the liquid latex over the bodies and then just brush the sand and water over the whole painting and then peel off the resist. But I couldn't do that in this case. So you'll see as I'm drawing it, I keep drawing to the left, in between them, and to the right of my daughter. I tried to go across, working left to right in horizontal lines. See how I bring that gray all the way over between them? Let me see if I'm going to do it again. Oh, his footprints. Those were fun to make. Well, you'll see as it goes on that I kind of work back and forth going right through them. Anything I do on the left of the dad, I also have to do between them, and I also have to do on the right, unless it's their shadow. So in the reflections, after I put a bunch of pigment down, I used a white color pencil that is probably about 1.5 inches long. Right there it is on the right. I'm using it. So that worked really well to blend these colors on the wet sand. I didn't want to use them to blend other things because you lose the vibrancy, but on the wet sand part, it was perfect. It ended up giving me the exact blending and the exact haziness that I wanted. However, partway through this drawing, I lost my white colored pencil. So I switched to using a colorless blender. I switched to using like a very faded ice blue color. And here I'm doing the folds and the denims of the jeans. So many colors. And the camera was far away, and I kept trying to focus it and trying to get the exposure right because the colors are so much more rich than they're showing up in the video right now. When I realize that if I move the camera closer, the colors are more accurate to what I'm drawing, I actually lower the camera so it's closer to the drawing and you'll only see part of the drawing. The shadows of the jeans are not black, they are dark blue. There, I zoomed in a bit. But with that, I just used the camera zoom button and it looked digitized, so I decided not to use it. Here I'm going back into the water. I always start light with colored pencil and then make it darker as I go. Here I'm making the sky darker. Same color I used before, just doing more layers of it. But if you go too dark with the colored pencil, you can't bring it back. So I always start light and work darker. My horizon line was getting messed up, so I put a ruler down and did the horizon line again. It's easier for me to just hold the ruler and draw against the ruler than to try to use masking tape. With colored pencils anyway. Masking tape would probably work better with paintings, but with colored pencil, the ruler was awesome. I started doing the foam here. You'll see a paintbrush. I had a very large soft brush that I just used to wipe away any eraser marks or anything. Here I'm going in with a gold color for my dark sand and some grays. I was using a lot of cool grays. Prismacolor makes, these are all Prismacolor pencils I'm using, and they make a like 10% cool gray, 20% cool gray, 30%, 40% cool gray. So I was using the different levels of the cool gray. The difference between a cool gray and a warm gray is to make the color black, you would mix blue and brown. So a warmer black has more brown than blue, and a cooler black has more blue than brown. So once you add white to this, to get a cooler gray, a middle gray would be exact amounts of brown and blue and white. Throw some white in there to make it gray. And then to make this gray cooler, you would add a little bit more blue, or to make a warmer gray, you'd add a little bit more brown. So Prismacolor does that for you and already makes pencils that are cool grays and warm grays. So I used a lot of the cool grays in the reflection wet sand area, and the warmer sand, like the center bottom of the picture here, I used some of the warmer grays because that was reflective on warm sand surface, and the cool grays were reflective water reflecting the cool sky, the cool blue sky. The curl of the wave was a huge challenge. It helped me to go across the wave with the colors, like I did a row of dark blue, a row of turquoise, a row of lighter turquoise, a row of very light blue, and then I went dark blue again. So I worked it all the way across the is that called the crest of the wave or the roll of the wave? I don't know. And here I'm working some greens. The reason I was using the greens on the wave is because that's what color it was in my photograph, because the sunlight was shining through the water, and that makes the wave have a greener tint. And as the water, as the ocean went out to the horizon, it was a darker blue, like a dark turquoise, and I used the peacock green for that. And I'm not even near finished with the water here. I work into it a little more, and in a little bit you'll see me grab the mineral spirits to blend with a brush. Here I'm adding more sand colors, and I used peaches and browns and probably some warm grays. Now I'm doing some grays on my daughter's dress, and I'm trying to zoom in so you could see it. I had to keep a lot of it white because the dress was white. So then I had to figure out, oh, here I go with the mineral spirits. I'm like, I gotta blend this because I have to blend it to see what I'm working with, and then go back in with some more pencil. Because once I add the mineral spirits, as you can see, it gets richer and it covers up the white paper where I don't want white paper. So I'm using the mineral spirits, and I keep rinsing my brush off in the mineral spirits and dabbing it on a napkin. And that gives me a clean brush. So every time I go back in, I want a clean brush because I don't want these blues, like I'm doing right now, to pick up and go into my greens that I'm working on now. So I had to keep cleaning the brush with the mineral spirits. If you don't have enough layer of watercolor pencil pigment down, then when you wipe the mineral spirits on it with the brush, it'll just kind of lift it off and you'll be left with white paper. So you really need like 5 or 6 layers of pigment. And that doesn't mean it has to be 5 or 6 layers of different colors. You could have 5 or 6 layers of green, the same green pencil. And the mineral spirits just like kind of dissolve a little bit of the wax and really make it rich. What you can't do, I color on watercolor paper. And the reason I color on watercolor paper is because it's very resilient to wetness and it's very workable. If I was using just drawing paper, I'd really be ruining the paper. But this watercolor paper is thicker. It has a deep tooth, meaning it has dips and ridges in it. So when I blend with the mineral spirits, I have a lot to work with, and I can work the brush to get the colors into the tooth of the paper without burnishing or rubbing down the tooth of the paper. The reason you don't want to burnish too early, and I said this in my last video, is if you burnish too early, you're rubbing and grinding down the tooth of the paper. Once you make the paper flat and smooth because you've burnished it or blended it by pressing hard, then it's hard to draw on. You go back and try to draw on this flat surface with the pencil, and the pigment won't come off the pencil anymore. Think of if you were trying to draw on a glass. The pigment's not going to come off on the glass or on a mirror. But if you try to draw on sandpaper, it's going to grind the pencil right down. And the pigment is going to take to the paper. And that's what happens with watercolor paper. That's why drawing paper and watercolor paper have what's called a tooth to them. So you don't want to wreck that tooth by burnishing and rubbing it down. If you're at the very end of your drawing and you want to blend and burnish, that's fine. But just know that you won't be able to add color again to that. Let me see what else is going on here. So I'm getting some more darks in now that I've rubbed it with the mineral spirits. Getting some, trying to get some more contrast in. Okay, so now I'm practicing for her leg. And I'm getting the peaches I need for her leg. And the practice one I did was huge. And it's so much easier to draw huge than to try to draw these teeny tiny legs. And I think this is about where I lower the camera so you could see the colors better, because they look so pale right now. So let's see, I'll probably zoom in here and move the camera in a moment. There's the dark pink I'm using for the shadows, the same one I used on the example, on the practice. And for the practice, I used the same watercolor paper because the colors are going to take different to a different surface. So if you're testing out colors, you want the exact same paper. If it's cold pressed, you want cold pressed. So here you see me going back and forth and testing the colors, because some of these light peaches looked light peach, but when I drew them on my test paper, they were like gray. And I'm like, I don't want that. Here I'm working on her hair, which is golden yellow with some dark roots. And then I go back into the water because I made her hair too big. And here's my browns. I left the area of shine. And then I'm trying to do my daughter's dad's hair and head. And this was such a challenge. It's hard for you to see because it's far away, but I do zoom in. I will zoom in shortly. He has like peppery gray hair and browns in there. And I really wanted to get it right because he has these silvery white. Here I am with a white oil pastel to get some of my whites back because I lost my white colored pencil. So the white oil pastel worked great. I'm doing some grays in his shirt. So this is zoomed in a little on it. So you can see the colors are more real. You can see the golden colors in her hair and the browns. And I back up again to see what the sand is doing. And I want to make the sand richer. So I'm adding some very warm peaches and tans. Here I'm adding blue on both sides of their bodies and on each sides of their legs. I'm putting more contrast in the denim jeans. The jeans are fun. I really love drawing fabric. Here I put a little more contrast under his foot and in the footprints. Here I'm trying to draw some pebbles. And I realize I need some more darks in the water, because I kind of had some halo going around the bodies because I didn't work my colors right against my daughter. So here I'm trying to just take a step back and see where I need to continue blues and grays through their leg area. And doing this really made their legs pop. So I'm glad I did it. That was very important. And now I'm going back in with the mineral spirits again to darken up what I did. Loving that wet sand. Look how nice the greens look in the waves. It's really those dark greens and blues contrasting against the white paper that's making the ridge of the waves pop. Hope you enjoyed this. Please subscribe for my updates and secrets of watercolor or colored pencil or whatever I'm working with that day. And I appreciate you sharing this video and subscribing to see all my future videos. Thanks.